In the quiet corners of history, long before the glow of screens filled our lives, a different kind of light flickered. It was the light of torches and gas lamps illuminating a world of wonder that arrived on wagons. This was the world of the traveling show. Its origins are woven into the very fabric of human society, beginning with the simple fairs, market days of medieval Europe. Here, among the stalls selling wares and livestock, a lone juggler, a musician, a person with a trained animal could gather a small crowd. These were the humble seeds from which a grand spectacle would one day grow. People, then as now, were drawn to the unusual, the skilled, and the entertaining. In a life often defined by hard work and routine, the arrival of a show was a breath of fresh, exciting air. As centuries passed, these scattered performances began to coalesce. Enterprising individuals in the 1700s and 1800s saw the potential in gathering these disparate acts under one banner. They brought together acrobats who defied gravity, clowns who offered laughter, and menageries of exotic animals from faraway lands. This combination formed the blueprint for the modern circus. The very essence of a traveling show was its mobility. In the earliest days, this was a slow and arduous process. Entire operations were packed into horse-drawn wagons, which trundled along muddy, unpaved roads from one village to the next. The procession itself was often part of the spectacle, a parade that announced the show's arrival. Animals, performers, crew, all moved together, their lives dictated by the pace of their horses and the condition of the roads. This method limited the size and scope of the shows. They had to be small enough to be packed up and moved with relative ease. The travel was grueling, and the success of the enterprise depended on careful planning and the resilience of everyone involved, from the ringmaster to the stable hands. The advent of the railway system in the mid-19th century completely revolutionized the industry. Suddenly, distance was no longer such a formidable barrier. For a performer or worker in a traveling show, the day began long before the first ticket was sold, often with the rising of the sun. The morning air would be filled with the sounds of labor, the rhythmic clang of sledgehammers driving stakes into the earth, the shouts of men guiding the massive canvases of the big top into place, and the calls of animals waking in their enclosures. A performer's duties often extended far beyond their time in the ring. Many were expected to participate in the setup and teardown of the show, a collective effort that bonded the community together. Their first tasks might involve mending their own costumes, practicing their difficult routines, or tending to the animals that were their partners in the act. As the morning progressed, the show lot transformed from an empty field into a bustling, self-contained village. The cookhouse would be serving simple, hearty meals to the hundreds of workers, a vital hub of social interaction and sustenance. Performers would begin their personal preparations, a ritual that was both practical and meditative. An acrobat might spend an hour stretching and warming up their muscles to prevent injury, while a clown meticulously applied their unique makeup, the face the public would see. For those who were part of the sideshow or the Congress of Freaks, this time might be spent preparing their individual stages, ensuring their personal space was ready for the curious gazes of the crowd. It was a life of immense discipline and hard work. The exhibition of human beings with unusual physical characteristics is not a new phenomenon. It has roots that stretch back through antiquity. However, it was the 19th century showman, most famously P.T. Barnum, who systematized and commercialized this practice on an unprecedented scale. Vintage posters and early museum interiors show how it was marketed. Early shows were often part of dime museums or small annexes to the main circus, but they quickly grew into a major attraction in their own right. Promoters framed these exhibitions with scientific-sounding language and sensational storytelling. They presented individuals with rare congenital conditions, conjoined twins, people of extreme height or weight, billing them as human curiosities, often labeled freaks of nature. The shows were designed to provoke wonder, shock, and sometimes pity. Initially, exhibits were simple. A person on a platform narrated by a lecturer, often with life stories heavily embellished. As competition grew, acts became more theatrical. Performers were encouraged to develop talents, singing, playing an instrument, telling witty stories, transforming them from passive exhibits into active entertainers. People like Charles Stratton, General Tom Thumb, became international celebrities, living lives of immense wealth and fame within the show world. But experiences varied. Some found sanctuary and opportunity, community and acceptance, while others faced exploitation, reduced to their bodies, subject to dehumanizing posters, or controlled by managers who took most of their earnings. The line between choice and coercion was often blurry. Some were even sold into the life as children, with little control over their destinies. The decline of the traditional traveling show was not a single event, but a slow and steady erosion, caused by a confluence of powerful forces. Perhaps the most significant factor was the rise of new forms of entertainment. The early 20th century saw the birth of the motion picture, which could offer spectacular stories and visuals for a fraction of the price of a circus ticket. Nickelodeon's Grand Movie Palaces. As those venues appeared across the country, the novelty of the traveling show began to wane. Later, the arrival of radio followed by television, which became the ultimate competitor. Alongside new media, public attitudes and medical understanding were shifting. As medical science advanced, conditions once treated as mysteries were given clinical names. Congenital conditions were increasingly seen as medical issues deserving compassion and care, not public exhibition. The change was slow but inexorable. Family entertainment began to feel exploitative and anachronistic. Gawking curiosity gave way to empathy and propriety. Legal and social activism also played a crucial role. Municipality states began passing ordinances restricting the exhibition of human beings for profit. These ugly laws reflected societal discomfort with the freak show model. Growing awareness around animal welfare led to protests and to new legislation. Concerns arose about training methods, transport conditions, and the ethics of keeping wild animals in captivity. Finally, the economics of running a massive traveling show became unsustainable. Costs for transporting by rail, feeding massive crews, and maintaining vast tents and equipment ballooned. As audiences dwindled, profit margins shrank and disappeared. The golden age of the railroad circus could not survive this new landscape. To tell the story of the traveling show with honesty, we must be willing to step into the shadows that existed just beyond the bright lights of the main ring. Behind the facade of wonder and amusement lay a history that was often deeply troubling. Many performers, particularly those in the sideshows, endured lives of profound hardship and exploitation. Some were controlled by unscrupulous managers who treated them as property. Managers paid them a pittance. Meanwhile, promoters profited enormously from their exhibition. These performers were often isolated from the outside world. They were subjected to grueling schedules. They performed day after day for endless streams of staring faces. Their personal dignity was frequently sacrificed for the sake of a ticket sale. The vulnerability of individuals with disabilities was systematically exploited. In some of the most tragic cases, people were not willing participants. They were coerced or forced. Children born with severe physical anomalies were sometimes purchased or leased from impoverished families. Those children were destined for a life on display without ever having a choice. People of color were also subjected to a particular brand of exploitation. They were often exhibited in pseudo-anthropological displays that reinforced racist stereotypes. They were presented as savages. They were presented as missing links. Their humanity was stripped away to create a sensational narrative for a predominantly white audience. This practice reflected the colonial and racial hierarchies of the era. The treatment of animals is another somber chapter. Some trainers formed close bonds with their animals, but the industry as a whole was rife with cruelty. Training methods for elephants and big cats often used brutal implements, bullhooks, and whips. Obedience was instilled through fear and pain. Life on the road was punishing for these creatures. They were confined for long periods in cramped cages on rattling train cars. They were deprived of the ability to engage in natural behaviors. The stress of constant travel, loud noises, and forced performances took a significant toll. Many animals suffered psychological distress and shortened lifespans. For every celebrated star like Tom Thumb, there were countless others whose names have been lost. These individuals lived and died in obscurity. Their lives were reduced to a line on a promotional poster. The grand traveling shows of the past may have largely vanished, but their echoes still resonate in our modern world, asking us to reflect on enduring questions about society, entertainment, human nature. The story of these shows is a powerful lesson in the complexities of choice agency. It reminds us that for some, the circus was a lifeline, a place of empowerment, community in a world that offered them none. For others, it was a prison disguised in spangles and bright lights. This duality teaches us to look beyond simple narratives, to appreciate the vastly different experiences people can have within the same system. It urges us to listen for the individual voice amidst the noise of the crowd. The legacy of the traveling show also compels us to think critically about how we consume entertainment today. The impulse that drew crowds to the sideshow, a fascination with the different, the other, has not disappeared. It has simply migrated to new platforms. We see it in reality television shows that often thrive on humiliation, in the relentless online scrutiny of celebrities' bodies, and the digital freak shows that can emerge on social media. The story of the circus serves as a moral compass, prompting us to ask important questions. Who profits from this spectacle? Is the participant a willing and empowered agent in their own story? Does this entertainment affirm dignity, or does it diminish it? Furthermore, the history of these shows is a mirror reflecting our own societal evolution. The shift in public attitude away from exhibiting human beings and toward a greater concern for their medical care, human rights marks a significant, if incomplete, step forward in our collective empathy. Similarly, the growing public outcry over the use of wild animals in entertainment reflects a deeper understanding of our responsibility toward other living beings. These changes did not happen overnight. They were the result of decades of advocacy, scientific advancement, slow, difficult cultural conversation. The story of the show's decline is, in part, the story of our own growing conscience. In the end, the traveling show remains a potent and poignant part of our shared cultural memory. Today, circuses that survive, like Cirque du Soleil, have reinvented themselves, focusing on breathtaking human skill and artistry, rather than animal acts, the exhibition of physical difference. Museums now carefully curate old posters and artifacts, attempting to tell this complex history with the respect and nuance it deserves. By engaging with this past honestly, by holding space for both the wonder, grief, joy, and justice, we do more than just learn about history. We learn about ourselves. We learn to be more mindful consumers of spectacle and, hopefully, to build a kinder, more dignified world for everyone.